Hello, White Sox fans. Welcome to episode 5 of Ladies Night. I'm here with my Southside Sox sisters, Hannah LaMotta and Allie Wesel, and Delia Ritchie may be jumping in here. There's some nasty old storms happening, so she might be caught up in that. But so we have a variety of fun things to talk about tonight. And what we're going to kick this one off with is we kind of teased it in our last one, but we're so busy talking, we never even got to it. But umpiring has been it's always a hot topic every year, but it seems like I think it's more of a hot topic now that people know that the ABS or the automated ball strike system is being used in minor league baseball. So I think it is maybe more on the front than it typically would be. But I just kind of started thinking about it with the whole Aaron Boone getting tossed out. Not like the ABS system would really help in that situation, but it just got me a little bit more interested in it. And so I started digging into it a little bit. Oh, here's Delia. Hey, welcome. We just got started. So I was hoping you didn't get caught in the storms or anything, because they were saying it was stormy in your area.
So I don't think yesterday it was on and off. So I had to accompany my mom to her PT appointment. So it was a little dicey, trying to get out of the storm, but thankfully I didn't hit too bad.
All right. Well, we're just starting to talk about the ABS system. So for people who don't know, also known as kind of the robo-ump system, it uses the Hawkeye technology, which actually tennis already uses, which I didn't know. And it relays the call to the ump's earpiece. And so there's two ways that it's being tested out. The one way is complete automated balls and strikes. So every call is, I've got some horrible feedback here. Yuck. Maybe somebody else talk. I don't know what's going on.
Try muting Delia. Delia, try muting yourself. I think it might be her.
Let me see. Oh, yay. Okay. Anyway, so there's two ways that it's being used. The one is the ump gets all the calls, every single one, in his earpiece, and then he relays the call. And then the other one is the challenge system, where a team gets 3 challenges and the pitcher, the catcher, or the batter can contest the call. And if they contest the call, they get 2 seconds to do it, which seems really fast. And if they're correct in contesting the call, they retain the challenge. If not, they lose it. So it's very interesting because they're using it in games Tuesdays through Thursdays. They're using the ABS for all pitches. And then on the weekends, Friday through Sunday, they're using the challenge system. So they're kind of trying to test both of them out.
So they're not doing both simultaneously.
Correct.
Interesting. And can you remind me, Melissa, what league that this is happening in?
So this is being used in all of AAA. Okay. And then it's being used also, so besides all AAA stadiums this year, the low A Florida State League. So I'm not sure why they picked just that, but so all of AAA is using it this year. It was not everybody last year. I don't remember exactly how many stadiums were using it last year, but now this year they all are. So what I read, feedback so far is that fans, players, coaches like the challenge system better than the strict ABS system, because they think that it still keeps the human element of the game, because really the umpire is still calling everything, but then on questionable calls, then it can be challenged. So I don't know. So what do you guys think about it? What are your thoughts in just in general about it?
It feels to me like some type of combination of something should exist, but at the same time, if an automatic balls and strikes, ideally, right, it's 100% accurate because it's using a zone. So it's interesting to me that they're using like two different, I didn't realize that there were two kind of routes that MLB was exploring. I thought it was just the ABS system. And like, I will say personally, I have been very anti robot umps. But ump scorecard on Twitter, which I'm sure a lot, I know it's been in the Southside Sox Slack, and a lot of people use that. This season, it just seems atrociously worse than past seasons I've noticed. And so I'm feeling myself starting to shift to the idea of some type of ABS system. Yeah, I guess like with these two trains of thoughts, it seems more like the ABS would be the more like efficient way to go. No need for challenging or questioning calls if you're already using a system that should be accurate. But I could see like with the challenge system like already in place for manager challenges or crew chief challenges for different calls in the game, just introducing that as like a new way to challenge rather than introducing a whole new system. So perhaps we could see maybe that first and then rolling out of a more official ABS system. I don't know. Interesting. Who else has thoughts? Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm torn on this because I am somebody who also doesn't believe in robo-umps because I don't necessarily like the changes that the game has made in the last few years, starting with, the ghost runner on second and extra innings, and then shortening the games by the pitch clock, which hasn't worked out. Well, it's worked out, but we see more injuries now with pitchers. And I'm like one of the people, as a classic baseball lover, I like the longer games. I like the traditional, but that's another story. But anyways, it does take out that element of having a umpire there and having them decide the calls. And at the same time, the challenge thing is nice, but it's getting like very confusing with everything. Like the way they're testing it is confusing, like only the specific days of the week and then only this on these days. And I think that like there needs to be a compromise because it's like at the end of a game and a close game, I like the idea that you should be able to like challenge a strike three call. Like if an umpire like calls a really bad like call and you could be like, no, that should have been strike three. Being able to like change that or something would be like different and interesting. But at the same time, I just think that it's getting too much. And I think that maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but umpires are bad, yes, but that's the same with referees in every other, like in the NBA, you still have to have referees in the NFL, every other sport. So that should be the same with umps. Just not a fan, but I do think that there should be ways to, change certain aspects. So it'll be interesting what they do with that. But just like overall, the idea seems very just all over the place. And I think that they need to, if it's going to happen, like either speed it up or like tell us what's going on and be more clear about it.
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with everything. I think the way they're doling it out, it feels like a college schedule. Like, yeah, you have your Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're going to do this system, but on the rest of the weekend, it's this system. And consistency is key. And with the ump scorecard, we've definitely seen kind of like a downward spiral for umpires and calls. And it's not just one. It's not just like you're pointing a finger at Joe West, you're pointing a finger at C.B. Buckner. It's a widespread issue, and it doesn't help the argument of keeping human umpires, and it definitely puts in like robo umps as the favorite. I'm not a fan. I don't think it should happen, but I do think that you shouldn't get kicked out for wanting to challenge a play and you argue with a ump that made a bad call. I don't think that should ever be, because I've seen some of that too with like the Yankees and stuff. But the ghost runner on second is terrible though.
Oh yeah, don't even get me started on that one. So I like when I first heard of it, being an older baseball fan, I was like, oh, that's, taking stuff away from the game and being, more traditional about it. But like as it has evolved already in using now technology to, challenge calls on the field and things like that. I'm like, we've kind of already gone there. So we're there. And so, and I'm thinking, these games for us as White Sox fans this year don't really count. But someday, hopefully, they will count again. And like, a called third strike, or even it doesn't even have to be like a called third strike. It could be strike 2 and they don't get that. And then they go on to give up runs and whatever. Like, I don't know, it could be really meaningful at some point. And so I kind of like the idea of the challenge, because the challenge system, and because it seems to move pretty fast too. Like, you have to do it within 2 seconds and you only get, a handful. And so like strategically, like, how do you use those? And then as to try and get more fans involved, like, they put it up on the board. Cause I mean, when they do that now, when you're at a game and they challenge a call, I don't know, they play the fun songs like tell me something good, or, let it be, or whatever. I don't know. It's kind of fun. So I was like, I think, I don't know, as the more I'm finding out about it and thinking about it, I'm not like, yay, bring it on, but I could see how it could be a positive in the game. But I'm not like the whole just strike, ball strike complete 100% being called, that to me is a little bit more extreme, but I could live with and probably end up enjoying a challenge system.
The other thing though that I wonder is, introducing an automatic balls and strike system in the way of not doing the challenge system and just going straight to this ABS, like it takes away holding any accountability to the umpires to begin with, period. Like right now we see umpires missing plays or missing calls, and sometimes they're pretty egregious and can change the swing of a game pretty dramatically. And there's absolutely no accountability to these umps that blow these calls. Like, how long has Angel Hernandez been in the game, and how many, like those types of things. And so I do wonder if you're going the challenge route, and, at some point, is there some type of accountability that these umpires now hold? Like, you've had X number of successful challenges against you because players are, blah, 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 blah. Like, what then happens? I don't see that actually happening. I know that I've heard that the umpire union is like pretty strong, and which is like part of the reason why these like bad umpires stick around for so long. But yeah, I just, that's the other thing that I wonder too, like what kind of accountability now comes with having a new system for calling balls and strikes. Yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point, and something that certainly would have to be addressed in bringing it forward, I would think. But yeah, whenever you're dealing with unions, that makes things super interesting, whether it's the umpires or baseball or anything. Just one little interesting note to wrap this up, and we'll move on to the next thing. I was just like researching, like, kind of where is this coming from? And of course, because we already use replay and stuff like that. But one theory is that it's being talked about more because of the whole legalized gambling now, and the need for, I know, isn't that fascinating? And the need for it to be like 100% accurate and accurate results. And even though baseball doesn't, quote unquote, make money off of can't be involved in gambling, they sure advertise the heck out of it. And so what is that relationship? Could it be a driver? And I just thought that was kind of an interesting theory. So
money is always a driver, Melissa. So.
Yep, I know. Always. Just like advertising on I was shocked that the Yankees actually do advertising on their jerseys, but that's a whole other thing. All right. So I think I'm going to throw my football over to you, Allie, to talk a little bit about AL Central.
Yeah. Surprisingly, the White Sox are really the only terrible team in the AL Central, which is different than past years. Still, like, not the strongest division, but Cleveland is one of the better teams in baseball this season, if not one of the best in the American League. Right now, they're sitting atop the division at 32-17, followed by Kansas City, who I just lost what they're, just ignore. They're 30-19. And then Minnesota's in third, sitting one game above 500. When I brought up this topic last night, all four teams were above 500 or better. Detroit did lose to Kansas City last night, so they're sitting at 23-24. But they have one of the best pitchers in baseball right now. So I think if you guys are okay with it, I'll highlight just a couple of like kind of standout players from each team and kind of things to keep an eye out for. And one of those key players for Detroit right now is Tarek Skubal, who's been around for a while. And I feel like that's a name we've been hearing quite a bit. He has 6 wins so far this season over his 9 starts and has a very beautiful 1.80 ERA. Overall, the Detroit pitching staff is pitching very well. As a team right now, they have a 3.38 ERA, which is really respectable. However, their batting is struggling a little bit. Riley Green is leading their batting right now with a 246 batting average. So they definitely could pick that up, and they probably would be winning a few more games. Minnesota is just really average, if I'm going to be honest. Like, nothing really stands out about Minnesota. However, Willie Castro is hitting 265 right now, and Ryan Jeffers, their catcher, has hit 10 home runs. And they have their ERA for their pitching, which is probably, why they're sitting in a situation just one game above 500, is a 4.32 overall across all of their pitching staff. So could be improved upon. They are actually the only team besides the White Sox that have a negative run differential as well. They're at a negative 12, even though they're sitting in third place in the division. So I could see at some point, if Detroit decides to pick up their bats, them taking over. But then we've got Kansas City and Cleveland, who we've talked on plenty of podcasts before about these young teams only getting better. And, it's proving to be true. Salvi Perez is actually having a career season right now. He leads Kansas City in quite literally all of their batting stats. He's batting 341 across his 47 games played so far. He's got 9 home runs, 38 RBIs. And Bobby Witt Jr. is also just hitting out of his shoes right now. He's at a 295. He actually hit a 468-foot home run tonight into the fountains in Kauffman Stadium. So they're hitting very well and also pitching very well. Seth Lugo has a 1.79 ERA over 10 starts, 58 strikeouts, and only 13 walks. So that's been impressive. And then we get to our good friends over in Cleveland, who are just crushing it. Jose Ramirez is got 44 RBIs already this season, and Josh Naylor, no surprise, is leading. He was leading with home runs, but now he's tied with Jose Ramirez. They each have 12 home runs. I'm looking as the stats are live updating. So a lot of power hitting over there. And their pitching, again, is very respectable, 3.23 staff ERA. They were hit with some injuries. Shane Bieber is obviously was on the IL earlier in the season, but they've really recovered well. Tanner Beebe has a 3.93 ERA. He's only got 2 wins, but that's fine. Logan Allen, while his ERA is up there, does lead their team in wins with 5. So they are cooking with gas. And when you can hit, typically your pitching staff is not as, pressed. So yeah, just a little highlight of what's going on across the division. I feel like this is definitely a different vibe than what we're used to seeing. I feel like, Bobby Witt Jr., just today I saw MLB post about him being in early MVP talks, and Salvi Perez is obviously just crushing it in Kansas City. So it's interesting to see these teams come in the power rankings when those get released and stuff. So anyone got thoughts on our cutie little division?
Well, there is some crossover with White Sox killers. You brought up Josh Naylor, you brought up Jose Ramirez, and Salvi Perez. All three, unfortunately, are not the White Sox killer. but they definitely will become the White Sox killers, plural. Cleveland, I think, always has had the threat, and so is Detroit. But whenever I hear like Detroit has an incredible pitching staff, I am so reluctant to lean in because the last time they had a really incredible pitching staff, it all fell apart. Like they had Scherzer, Verlander, Porcello, I think, for a little bit, and
David Price.
David Price, like at least 5, which they ended up going to Boston. Like half of them went to Boston, half of them didn't. But they had one of the best pitching staffs in ever probably recorded. And then I think they got to the ALCS that year, and it just fell apart. Like everything unraveled. But that's
we're familiar with that.
Yeah, I mean, like everything falls apart when it matters most, or it just falls apart and nothing matters, you know. But with Detroit, I'm excited to see what I always want. You know, Jason Benetti to call a really good team, so I'm really happy for Detroit. But I'm also like, I don't love Javi Baez. I love his style of play. I love how awesome he is. I just don't like it when it's against my favorite team.
I'm gonna tell you right now, nobody in Detroit likes Javi Baez.
I knew it.
He has been that will probably go down as one of the worst free agent signings in modern, like in recent years of baseball.
Him and Chris Bryant, I feel like have had the worst downfall trajectory after trades and after being signed by like a different club, which makes me feel bad for like it makes me feel bad for the players. Like, you know, some of them want to play well. Like I feel like Chris Bryant does take it to heart. He does want to play better, but with Baez, it's like, we know you wanted to play in Chicago. Like, we get it. We understand it. At least, like, Rizzo is making the best out of his opportunity. And, you know, but it's just one of those things where you go, nice to know we're not the only ones who make the worst free agent signings.
Yeah. I did not know that Salvador Perez was that good right now. He's one of those players, it's like, when are you going to go away? Because it feels like he's been around forever, but he's also not even that old.
He's only 34.
That's insane. Like that, right? Like I thought he was like 38 by this point, but
I thought he was 40. Like I thought he was Miguel Cabrera. Like, moment in the sun, you're gone.
No, he is here to stay, unfortunately. But when it comes to the Royals, I'm very shocked that they are getting this good this quickly, I guess, from their turnaround from last year. Who knows if it'll last? It's still like too early to tell teams that are going to be good. I like draw the line at like mid-June. Like if they're still 10 games above 500 by mid-June, towards the end of June, I'll be like, okay, maybe they're legit. But right now, it's still too early for me to tell with them. The Tigers are one of those teams where it seems like every year they start off good and everybody's like, this is going to be their year. And then they just slowly fall off. And I have a feeling that's what they are doing now. They had a good April and have slowly been falling off. And it's not the pitching staff that's the problem. It's their offense. And that seems to be a recurring theme. And the Guardians are the Guardians. I can't stand them. And it's funny because they lost a 4-game series to us, and we took 3 games from them, which doesn't make sense, but that's baseball, so that's fun. And then the Twins are just there, as they always are. They have a lot of, staying healthy issues, and they're a whole different team when they have Buxton and Correa, or vice versa, like just one of them, like completely different team. So I'll be interested to see if the Royals can keep it up. If the Tigers will stay mediocre, which I have a feeling they will. That's just my personal opinion. And to see if the Guardians will guardian, because they always do. And it's just annoying, but, they're that team that seems to just – I don't know if they are, like, good or not, because it's like when they play us, of course, like we have they're the same, like, Sox killers, and they look so good. But I don't know, how they play versus other people, but versus us, yeah, they're really good. So, it's interesting, but we'll see. We'll see if the Royals can keep it up. I'll be very interested to see in that and see if Salvi continues. I mean, obviously, it probably won't be the pace that he's at like the whole year, or else that sucks. But like to see if he can keep it up will be interesting to see as well.
You guys, when I was kind of doing my research on what was happening in the Central, you guys touched on a lot of it, but the one thing that stuck out to me is that, and I don't know when the last time this has happened, we'd have to look, but it is entirely possible, if this keeps up, that one of the wild card spots could come out of the Central. Is that not insane? Because right now that's the case. The second place wild card is coming out of the Central, and like I feel like that hasn't happened ever. I mean, I'm sure it has happened at some point, but I was like, holy cow, it's always coming out of the East. There's always, Tampa Bay, Yankees, Boston, that's always coming out of the East. And so, I mean, I think that could be really cool. I mean, if we're going to suck, we're going to suck, and that's fine. But I think it would be good for the Central if we can be like, yeah, we have a wild card and we have a division winner. Woo! And Salvi's OPS plus is 171. That is like absolutely insane.
He is mashing. It is. Yeah. I did not realize, like until I started looking, I did not realize just how out of his shoes he's playing.
And all that talk in the off season, remember about him possibly the Sox taking on his contract and all that kind of stuff. I mean, clearly it would have been ridiculous if we did, because he would be doing nothing for us, and it would be probably blocking and preventing, some of our young catchers and coming through. But 171 OPS plus. Like, I had him on my fantasy team and I traded him away because I was mad that I was like, oh, of all the catchers, I got stuck with Salvi Perez.
Yeah. Well, and the benefit of playing in MLB is, like, once his knees start giving out, he can just slide into that DH spot and ride his ship into the sunset. Yep. So I would bet we have a good 5 or 6 years left with Salvi in the league, as long as his body holds up. But yeah, no, as much as I love to hate Cleveland or Kansas City or Detroit or Minnesota, I do love when the teams are good and can like represent. And also seeing how miserably the White Sox rebuild failed, it is kind of fun to see a team set out and get young prospects and like put all of the pieces together and be like, oh, that's what that's supposed to look like. That's what happens when you do that successfully.
So maybe we will be the Royals. We really will be the Royals eventually.
One can only hope, right?
All right. Well, we're going to break real quick. So have a listen to what our sponsors are trying to sell you, and we will be back in 1 second. All right. Welcome back, everybody. All right. I am going to punt our second half of the podcast over to Hannah.
Yes. Okay. So I just wanted to talk about our farm system a little bit and what's going on around there, because, I mean, there's some good positives, and with this team, we'll take what we can get. So, new news is that the number 2 White Sox prospect and the 40th overall Noah Schultz is joining the Birmingham Barons starting rotation. Drew Thorpe, Kai Bush, Mason Adams, Jairo Iriarte, and Jake Eder have combined for the lowest ERA in the Southern League with a 2.56 ERA, and that's the 3rd lowest in the minor leagues total. And it's been said that like nobody from that rotation is planning to come up to the White Sox anytime soon, but either way, the Barons have been tearing it up, and it's really fun to watch. It's fun to watch a good team. So to go along with that, the White Sox number 7 prospect, Jacob Gonzalez, is being promoted to the Barons. He's 21. He was drafted 15th overall last season, and his ETA isn't until like 2025 or 2026. But he does seem to be progressing well, so that's always good. And then we have some quick check-ins on Colson Montgomery and Edgar Caro. Montgomery is currently the number 11 prospect in the MLB and number 1 for the White Sox. And with the Charlotte Knights so far this year, he has a 228 average with 6 home runs, 17 RBIs, and a 7.57 OPS. And Edgar Caro is now the 96th prospect in the MLB and number 4 for the White Sox. And with the Barons so far this year, he also has a 228 average with 6 home runs, 31 RBI, and a 714 OPS. So overall, in the new MLB Top 100, there are 4 White Sox players: Montgomery, Schultz, Thorpe, and Caro. And yeah, if there's any thoughts on any of those, I'm a little surprised, honestly. Montgomery started number 9, I believe, in all of MLB, so he's moved down a little bit. I'm surprised that he doesn't have, I guess, maybe more RBIs. 17 seems a little low, especially like compared to Caro, who has 31. But the home runs, like, I'm fine, I guess, with 6 right now. You'd like to see more, but I don't know when he's going to arrive. I think it'll be like in the second half of the season for sure, but it's just important to make sure that he's making progress, because there is absolutely no reason to rush him. Like, we're not playing for anything right now. And yeah, I guess if anyone has anything to say about any of that, feel free.
Yeah, I've seen a lot online today about Nick Nastrini is, I think, coming up to pitch tomorrow. And there's been a lot of talk online about Drew Thorpe potentially getting promoted to AAA. Some, if not now, very soon. So I'll be interested, like that will be interesting to see if he does get pulled up to AAA. But it would make sense given that they just moved up some new pitchers to AA. Like, it feels like a natural thing to promote, especially when they are trying to give some of these, or they appear to be trying to give some of these younger guys opportunities up on the major league level. So there's spots to fill in Charlotte for sure.
I have a little bit of mixed emotion about kind of what's going on with Colson right now. On the one hand, last year, I mean, due to some injury issues, he didn't have a whole lot of playing time in Birmingham. So, you know, he didn't have a full season. So it was kind of quite the jump, I thought, to throw him in Charlotte to start with. I kind of thought maybe they would keep him, you know, start him in Birmingham and kind of move him up. So in that sense, I'm like, okay, it makes sense that he's not like hitting the cover off the ball, because again, he's 22 years old. He hadn't had that full year of development. But on the other hand, like, Charlotte is like a place where hitters love to hit. And so I'm kind of like, why is he, you know, kind of so slow with the RBIs and the average and things like that. And there's been a little bit, you know, plate discipline was one of the things that, you know, he was kind of always applauded for. And that's down a little bit this year in terms of, you know, his ability to get on base, you know, via the walk and things like that. So I just hope they don't rush him, because I feel like at the beginning of the season, that kind of was a rush putting him in AAA. So I would be even fine with, like, if we don't see him this year, like, just let's just not mess this kid up.
Well, you start to wonder too, with some of those like dips in stats, like, is he putting pressure on himself to get to that level? Because, I mean, he's not stupid, right? Like, he sees the opportunity there. There is a spot to fill up in Chicago. Like, if he were to perform, like, they would probably give him the opportunity to get some at bats. So,
right. So yeah, again, it's something that if he was still at the Barons, you know, it'd seem a little bit further away. But when you're right there in Charlotte and all of these other young guys are getting the call up, you know, like you said, Allie, is he putting the extra pressure, feeling the extra pressure to be like, yeah, I should be the next guy called up, because there's nobody really at short in Chicago. There's nobody anywhere. So, like, they're probably all putting pressure on themselves to be.
Yeah.
I also, to me, it's kind of interesting as I was looking through what's going on, and I did my first minors recap last week, was that a lot of the guys because we do have awesome pitching, but we don't have a lot of hitters. And so that's kind of terrifying. Like, we could end up with this amazing, you know, rotation in Chicago, and then we don't have anybody to hit. And then we go and sign some mid-level, you know, free agents, and we just do the same old like we always do. And so, but there are some guys who were just, you know, are not on the MLB top 100 list who are doing really well. Like, Brooks Baldwin and Wilfred Veras, Chucky Robinson of all people, as another catcher. So in a system that had like no catchers forever, right? We've always we had catchers that they weren't good catchers since we had the tag team of McCann and Grandel when he was good, but it's like we haven't had a solid catching crew to pull from, and now we've got this whole influx of catchers coming in. So that his rise is kind of interesting to me. He was drafted by the Astros in 2016 and then DFA'd by them. And then he went to the Reds for a while, and then we signed him on a minor league deal, and he's like hitting the cover off the ball in Charlotte. But again, it's Charlotte, so got to take that with a grain of salt. So,
well, speaking of catchers, I mean, when Corey Lee was first like acquired, we were, there was not really any talks about him being like the catcher for us. It was mostly like Edgar Carroll, like will eventually come up, like he seems to have like a lot of power and everything. But now that Corey Lee is doing good, I guess that's good for Caro that they're not going to rush his like development, and he'll have more time to, make his way up. But it's like, could we potentially have two good, really like pretty good catchers like in the future with Corey Lee and Caro? Like I don't know, but it's nice to think about, because like you said, like we weren't supposed to have like good catchers, and I think Corey Lee has surprised a lot of people. So yeah, I'm interested to see like how that all pans out. But I guess it's good that Lee is doing good, so that Caro does not have to be rushed, because they don't want to mess that up on top of everything else.
I don't trust anything that the White Sox are doing with minor league players until there's actual success. So
yeah, we're all a little jaded there.
Well, that's why it's like, for me, it's hard for me to even be excited about any of this, honestly, because I am scarred from the last experience. Like, imagine if we were talking about the first rebuild, like now, like we would be so hyped. We would have so many prospects, and look how it turned out. So it's like, how can I even be excited with what we have, knowing that there is such a big chance that it's going to fail miserably? Like, it doesn't, I'm still like upset or like affected by like the first rebuild failing. I don't want to think about the next one right now and get excited for all these people, because what good has that done us? So it's hard, because like, it is really awesome. I mean, obviously it's nice to win. It's nice to see these kids doing good, but it's just like, oh yeah, like they're doing so good. Just wait till they get on the White Sox, and then it'll all fall apart.
Well, it also makes me laugh too, because Melissa's talked about before that like we have never really been able to develop pitchers. And so it's interesting to hear about all of these pitchers in AA that are pitching very well. And then I'm like, oh, can we do that? Is that possible?
Maybe the whole Brian Bannister effect. I mean, well, first of all, I think they all came from somewhere else other than Schultz, right? They all came from other places. So they started their development with somebody else. But now that we do have Brian Bannister, and maybe that is a real thing, fingers crossed. I don't know.
I agree with like the jadedness of it all. Like, I am not ready for the next rebuild to just fall apart. And I'm not willing to give like anyone at the helm credit. Like, I think that's why we gotta give credit to like, oh, they developed somewhere else, and we only have like 2 pitchers that developed here natural, like through the system. But I still like get scarred for life hearing Hawk Harrelson talk about all of like these former players that are now like, some of them are in the broadcast booth and some of them were good, some of them are not. Like, I do feel a little gaslit every time I hear Gordon Beckham's name, because the way Hawk Harrelson would praise him, and maybe this is just my ears, like as a kid, you would feel like he was the next like second coming of Jesus or something. Like, it was just one of those constant things where I'm like, no, this is just going to go. Like, it's going to go the way it goes, but it's also going to fall apart. And that's probably why I'm going to stick with being a White Sox fan. Because it's bad, but when it's good, it's good. And when it's bad, it's just really terrible.
Most of the time, it's just kind of bad.
least the food's good. That's like the one solid, consistent thing that even my friends who are like come to games, they're like, your food is the best in the MLB. I'm like, we gotta be good at something. Clearly not the product on the field.
Yeah, our game environment is really good. Like people shit on it all the time, but the food and the camaraderie and the stands and the views, and it's a fun ballpark to be at. So whatever, people. All right. We are gonna then just go into our very last topic for the night, which is White Sox killers. Delia, you're gonna lead the way there.
So I have to give credit where credit is due. I looked at the White Sox Reddit page just to kind of see if it was a talking point at some point, and the username Magooster, Magooster, compiled an entire list, but he conveniently left off a few that I have added. Billy Butler was one that I just vividly remember. He kind of like a lot like Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor. One of those guys that was just consistent no matter what. He didn't matter if he was wearing Athletics gear, Royals gear, just the shirt off his back. He would come in and hit and just home run after home run or just RBIs. Just we could have Mark Burley out there, like good Mark Burley, and he'd get a hit off of him. It was like, what kind of cheat code do you have? Another one, just someone just put the Twins roster from 2001 to 2004. And I'm like, you're right. Joe Mauer. Justin Morneau actually is the #1 White Sox killer. Like it was like one of the players just had a terrible experience with his, like the way he would attack the White Sox felt personal. Like you felt it. 25 home runs and 109 runs against the White Sox. And for me, I'm like, I don't think he was good, but he also wasn't as good as when he played the White Sox. So that was one of those things, kind of like a Naylor, where at least Naylor, Ramirez, they're kind of consistently good. They're not just killing the White Sox for fun. They're at least like good all around. Chili Davis was one that popped up. Salvador Perez was another. One of the funniest ones was rookie pitchers making their MLB debut with an ERA over 6.
Oh my gosh, that is so great. That is so true every time.
We make them look like Cy Young contenders. Like this is the next Chris Sale just against the White Sox. Well, Chris Sale when he was really good and not. He's still good. He's been killing it on the Braves. So shout out to him. Victor Martinez was one. Miguel Cabrera. You can't have a White Sox killers list without Miguel Cabrera. I was so happy. I think I popped open a bottle of champagne when he retired formally. I was like, finally! And then Cleveland happened. And I'm like, damn it! Not again. But I would say currently someone who could surpass Justin Morneau is Naylor, in my opinion. I really think he's going to surpass the career totals that Morneau acquired. Michael Cuddyer, Corey Kluber, which is a name that I remember hearing all the time, like, kind of like a sleeper agent. It just activated like he's going to get a hit. Doesn't matter. Jason Giambi, Torrey Hunter, Ian Kinsler, and then Miguel's. There's a ton of names on here, and I'm conveniently I just got so mad writing this list down because I just remembered vividly being at the ballpark. It's for some of these games where it felt like, oh, this is the Joe Mauer show. Great. Then you're like, oh, he's a good person. Darn it. Why don't you lead into the villain? Like, at least Morneau leaned into being a villain. Mauer didn't. And I'm like, come on, man. I want to fully hate you. So, but I also had to go revenge of the former White Sox players. White Sox players who played well when they went against their former team. And Frank Thomas, when he was in athletics, when he played for the Athletics, hit a home run his first game back as a visitor. And Joe Crede famously had 2 home runs the night that he made his the night that he started his career with the Twins, or he was 4 games into his career with the Twins, hit 2 home runs against the White Sox. And they famously played All Out of Love by Air Supply his first at bat. And then he hit a home run. So for me, that I feel like the former players that do well against their former team, like the White Sox players that come back and kill it against us, those hurt so much more. Because it was like, we had good times. Like, why couldn't we made it work? But I think I was reminded of this by Carlos Rodon doing pretty well again for the Yankees. And so I don't know why this list compiled in my head, but it was definitely like, oh, revenge of the former Sox players. Like, I can't wait until we play Boston, because then I'm like, oh, Giolito's injured, but there's still a chance for Liam. But I'm like, is Hendricks injured? So I want former Sox players to do well against the White Sox, because chances are they got hurt. So I'm all for it.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because yesterday there was a doubleheader, Braves versus Padres, and the first game of the doubleheader was Cease versus Ronaldo Lopez. And I was like, oh, this is going to be such a great game to watch. And then Dylan Cease went 4+ and gave up so many runs. But Ronaldo Lopez, like, that is just because he came, if I recall correctly, he came into the White Sox organization as a starter, then he was struggling a lot with locating his fastball, and they moved him to the bullpen. He was that weird clopener. Sometimes he closed, sometimes he opened a game. He was a mid reliever. Like, his role was really odd. Famously got traded last season with Giolito to the Angels, and then they both sign to Cleveland. Yep. When they were claimed off of waivers. Yeah.
Yep.
And now he's down with the Braves and in a starting role. And I think his ERA is below 2 still. He didn't give anything up yesterday that I can remember. But that was a fun little interesting, like, hey, you both played for a team I love. And Cease, like, overall is having minus yesterday, is having a really great year in San Diego. So I feel like there's a lot of players, like, not necessarily killing the White Sox like revenge when they come back, but around the league there are players that used to play for the Sox that are not playing well, i.e. Tim Anderson, but there are a lot of former White Sox players that I feel like are playing very, very well. So that's always good to see. I like to root for old friends.
It'll be interesting to see, because Giolito, when he did get traded last year, he kind of sucked. Like, he wasn't that good. So it'll be interesting to see when he gets back how he is. But the one player I will never, ever say a bad thing about in my life is Liam Hendricks. I want him to do all of the good in the world and be the best closer and ever. Like, he's probably one of my top White Sox ever. And sometimes, like, I'm a little bit of a salty fan to our old players. I won't lie. Like, I kind of like sometimes seeing them get, like, shelled, even if it is someone who did good with us. I don't know. It's just like, if you're not on my team, like, okay, bye. But the one thing that I will never have, like, any anger or animosity towards is Liam Hendricks. And he was so good. Like, just such a good person. And him and his wife, Christy, like, just did so much good for the community. And, like, I don't know. I just love him. And I really hope the best for him. And coming back, he'll be really fun to watch. But when you said Billy Butler, I literally got, like, a chill in my body, because I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know we were going back. And what I remember Sox killers, what pops to my 12-year-old, 11-year-old mind was, I don't know why, and I don't even know, like, statistic-wise if he was, but Prince Fielder on the Tigers. Like,
hey, hold on. I remember Prince Fielder.
Yeah,
I remember him, but I remember he was with the Brewers. And then when he came to the AL Central, I was like, son of a biscuit. Like, we're going to get destroyed. So I don't have him on that list, but mentally I was kind of like, should Prince Fielder be on this list? Like, I'm like, no. But what you said about Liam Hendricks, that is the one player my mom and I, like, for me, there's two closers in my heart that I will always love and I will always have good things to say about, and it's Bobby Jenks and Liam Hendricks. And yes, there was a brief period of time where Addison Reed was my number one favorite closer of all time. That's because he was just nice to me. And mentally, I was also a child, like 13, and I was like, oh, he's cool. He's from California. That ended very quickly. But Liam Hendricks, like, my mom and I can't talk about it. It's like the thing we don't address with the White Sox. But we're still angry with the organization of how it played out. But we have nothing but love for him. And my mom's like, he's like, I'm embracing Boston. Like, if you say anything mean about the Bruins, like, my wife will kill you. And my mom's like, what do you mean? He's still gone. Like, it's one of those things where we get emotional talking about it. Like, it's a loved one that left. Like, it's just. But Prince Fielder is an interesting one because I think he was just known for being a killer, and then unfortunately with his injury, it was really tough to see someone that was so dominant for so long go out the way he did, because he did deserve the going out. Like, he did deserve to go out on top, but he also deserved to go out like Miguel Cabrera, where he at least like achieved so much, and he did achieve so much. And so Prince Fielder, I'm always like saying that with a sad, like, he killed my team, but I still liked him. Like, he was a good guy, decent.
Right. So yeah, I just found a Southside Sox article from 2013. In 161 plate appearances, he had 45 hits, seven doubles, 6 home runs, 20 RBIs. 310 batting average, 483 slugging against the White Sox.
I think that whole Tigers team with Miguel Cabrera, Prince Fielder, Max Scherzer, and Justin Verlander is engraved into my mind in Sox killers in those years when we sucked and they were good. And that's the same with like the 2014, 2015 Royals. Like, anybody on that team, like Mike Moustakas, Eric Hosmer. I remember Gerard Dyson. He was always just like on late in the games as like a pinch runner, and he was just he always stole around the bases like against us and just scored those runs against us. Like, and I just have like vivid memories of like all of those players like being Sox killers, probably because we were so bad, and they were both like those Royals and Tigers teams were really good. But Billy Butler, that strikes a nerve on me because I remember that, and the Sox killers like from then just stick with me.
Billy Butler, Morneau impacted me a lot because I remember like vividly the 2008. I was there physically at the 2008 one game playoff. Like, winner goes to the playoffs, and just that Twins era was just, even though it was 2008 and like they were kind of waning a little bit, it was still, the game 163 was so intense. It was like John Danks was on, and everyone was dressed in black, and it was so awesome. But it was also like scary as hell because we'd only shown one home run. Like, we had one home run, and then Brzezinski just knocked out. I can't remember if it was Morneau or Maurer, but it would be hilarious if it was Morneau because I'm like, you deserved it. Like, you deserved it. Like, but the Tigers of that, like the Tigers when they won, I felt so bad when they lost. Like, I don't know why. I guess it was just like my mom kind of instilled like you have to root for the division, like no matter, even if it's a team that we hate, they're representing the team at like the highest possible. So like when the Royals were in the World Series, it was awesome. So it was like, this is the highest possible stage they can be on, and the fact that they won was even sweeter, I think, in 2015. Yeah. But the Tigers, I always felt like they're gonna get that. They're never gonna have that rotation. Like, they might have flashes of it, like the specific starters that they're developing, they're really good, but they're never going to have that rotation that was like Verlander, Scherzer, like whoever it started. Like, that was one of the most dominant pitching staffs, and like their hitting, you can't just rely on Miguel Cabrera. Like, I'm like, I want to go back in time and talk to their manager and be like, dude, you can't just rely on Miguel Cabrera. Like, you got to have some other punches. Like, you got to, because that was 2012, right? 2011.
Somewhere, I was like 11, 12, 13. So yeah,
I was a freshman in high school if this was 2012. But
that was like my first memories of Sox killers starts in like 2012, probably.
Mine probably starts with this, but I'm also 26. So mine definitely start as a kid, like just remembering going to games and stuff. But
yeah, well, I've got old people.
Yeah. Some of your White Sox
like Cal Ripken Jr. and Eddie Murphy and like those guys. But I went with when I was looking at people, I went with your former players who, once they came back and what did they do? And it was funny because I was like, oh, Harold Baines, I'm sure he like killed us. No. Frank Thomas, no. Robin Ventura, no. Ozzie Guillen. So Ozzie only played 8 games against us after he left, but he slashed 333, 333, 333 with a 937 OPS, which I was like, of course he did. Of course, Ozzie would be like, I'm going to stick it to you, a-holes, because, you know, when he left as a player, it wasn't on good terms either. So the other one was Sammy Sosa, of course. Sammy Sosa absolutely hosed us every single time that he faced us. He had a 919 OPS, 14 home runs, 49 RBIs. Totally crazy. And on the pitching side, really, I just found Chris Sale. He in 30 innings pitched 2-1 with a 3.30 ERA. So, but yeah, those were my fun ones.
I always thought that, like, even though I was pretty little, I thought that Magglio Ordonez would always play like really well against the White Sox when he came back with the Tigers. But then I'm like, oh, maybe he just didn't, and it just didn't really register. But Joe Critty was the only one I vividly remember, like the walk-up song, the home runs, and they killed us like 12-5 in 2009. So that was the only player I really remember like growing up watching and then going like, wow, this actually is my Harold Baines, because my mom loved Harold Baines, and then he got traded, and she cried. Like, I'm publicly admitting that. And
I was with your mom. I was the same way.
I'm so sorry, Mom. And she like loved Carlton Fisk, like dressed up for him as Halloween. But Harold Baines was like the trade where she saw me fall apart, like over the years, like with the Blackhawks trading like certain players that I loved, like that I grew up watching or something like that. Like when I got into hockey and started watching them, but seeing her talk about that, like Harold Baines, and then having Hendricks, like the way it played out, she's like, she literally dropped what she was doing. She was in shock. And I'm like, oh God, she's reliving. This is her Harold Baines. This is Harold Baines, but with a kid, and like 40 years later, or however many years later. But the one trade that I think just killed me was Aaron Rowand, and I became a Phillies fan as like my National League team because of that trade. It worked out for both sides, but I was also petty and 7 years old. So I was angry at Ken Williams for making this trade. I'm like, how could you? We had no one. We have no one coming up. We have no one. I was going to write some like angry letters, but then I didn't, thank God. Like my mom was like, honey, reeled in. It's not that bad. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. We got Jim Thome in that.
Again, that's like the third player I would never, like, I will never say that. Like, he was so nice to me as a kid. And that's where I felt like I was like a kid in the stands, or a kid that just said hello in his Hall of Fame speech. I still get emotional reading that because it's just like my family, what I grew up with, and having my cousins grow up watching like Jim Thome and Paul Konerko. Like, that's the fourth player, I guess, but he didn't leave. He retired with us. That's what.
If Paul Konerko ever would have played for another team, that's where I would have. That would have been my breaking.
I would have had to be somewhere. Like someone would have put me in a like lock the key, padded. I would be inconsolable. Like
that's how I was with Gordon Beckham. Don't judge me. I know, like everybody.
Oh, I'm so judging you, Hannah.
You guys don't understand. I have that's
girl. I'm with you. My first jersey was a Gordon Beckham jersey.
I was obsessed with him. I still am.
Too. I made him laugh when I was in middle, like 2009. I did like I said an inappropriate joke, and he probably thought it was hilarious that this child is telling him this inappropriate joke that she was told in 5th grade. So she's like, I'm in 6th grade now, so I'm gonna tell this joke to him. He like split his side laughing so hard, and I'm like, okay.
See, I love him. I will always love him, and that's how I was. And then I remember my specific vivid memory of when they re-signed him. I was a freshman in high school, and I started screaming in the lunchroom, and everybody looked at me, and I didn't care, and I started running around.
I like joked. I jest. I love Gordon Beckham. He was probably one of my formative like middle school, grade school crushes. I will say that. But I just joked like we should all make T-shirts. Like I was Stockholm syndromed into loving this like ex-player on the White Sox by Hawk Harrelson, but it's too long. But there are many times where Hawk Harrelson has had a man crush, and it's been like, come on, man. Let's just not, like, Todd Frazier. I think I was homesick that day from school, and I watched that game, and I'm like, dude, did he really just leave? Did he leave the studio? Did he leave and go down? And he did, and it was so hilarious. I just remember being like, I was home, and I was like, I have no one to talk to about this because my mom's not home. I'm homesick. I'm only telling my dog, but you know, it all worked out ish.
It's hard not to get emotional about baseball, you know. I mean, that's a huge part of it, right? It plays with your emotions. So, all right.
Yeah.
Well, we are at our hour, and yes. So thank you everybody for sticking with us, and we will be back in a couple of weeks. We'll see you then.
Bye. Bye.